Welcome to the I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes podcast. I'm author and speaker Carrie Severson. In each episode, I'll share stories and tips from my experience with caregiving and advocacy through my husband's cancer journey. Hi, welcome back to I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes podcast. Nice to see you again. Thanks for being here. So we're nearing the end of this season, which is really weird for me because like 6 months ago, I had no idea I was even going to do this. So much happens in the healing journey, post-cancer, post-caregiving. And now that we're a year past my husband's cancer treatment and my caregiving for him, now I can see very clearly there was such a massive blessing in that whole experience. I was talking to my speaker agent the other day, and I'm like, I'm a storyteller. I'm a public speaker. People give me good money to get up on stage and share story. And when my husband was in the long-term cancer wing, he couldn't speak. We had to sign a piece of paper that gave me authority to be his voice. And when that was happening, it was like I was having an out-of-body experience. I could see the importance of why that was happening to us. Because I think that the burden of caregiving, the heaviness of caregiving, family caregiving specifically, the confusion of it, the frustration in it, being married to the person you're caregiving for, it's a big ball of emotion and nerves, which is why this thing is called I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes. There's so much left unsaid. When it was happening to us, I could see the blessing, and I knew I was going to have to do something with it eventually. But in the moment, you're just one big raw nerve. But as I get close to finishing this season, I want to thank you for being with me this whole time. We have probably 4 or 5 more episodes to go. If you could share this with a caregiver, I would appreciate it. If you haven't followed me online, I would appreciate if you would. My goal in sharing all of this is to bring more stories like mine, more stories like ours to the light so that we can help not just the healthcare network heal, because I think that whole industry needs a healing and a reboot at a cellular level, from the person that's walking in the door to the person that's writing the checks at the top of the ladder. Hopefully this story of burnout and resilience and love and peace, recovery, makes its way into other industries as well. So this episode is a doozy. The last episode left with removing the physician assistant off his team, filing complaints against various staff members, but really getting the sense that he's about to get discharged from the long-term cancer wing, and I'm about to take on even more responsibility. The weekend at the hospital was actually really peaceful. We went for walks. We sat in, the hospital had this little park. We sat in the park. It was very quiet. And I remember, this is a year ago now, I remember doing everything I could to be in the moment and appreciate the moment, but being so scared and so overwhelmed with what I knew was about to happen, him getting discharged and still having weeks left of radiation and possible chemotherapy. I still wasn't taught how to feed him. He was on fentanyl, oxy, gabapentin, magic mouthwash, Tylenol, ibuprofen that I had to crush up and inject with water. He had to have sedation 30 minutes before radiation. And he was looking at like another 15 radiation sessions still. So it's Monday, like March 4th, 2024. I slept at home. I woke up and I prayed. My husband spiked a fever overnight because I knew if he spiked a fever, they wouldn't discharge him. I had stated my concerns to staff members. I talked about how much responsibility it was going to be. And I showed up for rounds that Monday. And they had made the decision that, he was ready to be discharged. So all day, I was basically just waiting around to, get papers, and I was really disappointed. I was very upset. So rounds happen. It's not just the attending physician. It's the internal medicine team. It's the dietitian team. It's everyone is standing in the hallway ready to address me because I had that order that no more than one team in his room at a time because the room is really small. It was very overwhelming. He couldn't speak. So I'm talking to the internal medicine team while the attending physician is talking to Gavin. And she's like, okay, so I understand you are requesting to still hold him, but I have to tell you that we don't have any reason to hold him. And I'm like, what about my request? Like, isn't that enough of a reason to keep him in here? And she's like, well, he came in needing a feeding tube. We gave him a feeding tube. He is able to tolerate the formula. He spiked a fever. His white blood cell count is doing better. He does not have pneumonia. And she went through all these things that Gavin was being watched for, even down to the burn victim. The burn unit was there saying that his burn was still there. Radiation burn was like a 2nd degree burn. There was nothing they could do to support it beyond what they were already doing, but it hadn't worsened. And so she's like, I'm sorry to tell you, we're going to discharge him. And I just stared at her blankly, and she's like, what it sounds like to me is that you are experiencing caregiving overwhelm. And I suggest you get help at home. And the thought, what's so fascinating to me, I never experienced anger in a way that I never experienced anger before in the way that I did as a caregiver. I haven't since. But the thoughts that run through my mind in moments like that, where it's like, you're close enough to me, I could bite you. You know what I mean? I could spit on you. Or things like, I wonder what jail food really tastes like. I wonder, do you get like one onesie, or does someone wash it? I was pissed. I was like, all right, girl, you need to take a step back because we're pretty close right now. And I don't have anything good to say to you. I actually did smile at her. I don't think it was a very nice smile. And I turned and I walked into Gavin's room and I shut the door. And there were all these people like standing in the hallway waiting to talk to me. And he looks at me and he goes, uh-oh. And I'm like, I hate this place. I think I said it pretty loudly too. I was pissed. So after some time, he gets sedated. He gets taken down to radiation. He comes back and he's totally out of it. And it's time for, the last feeding. And he's got this gravity bag and this machine. And I'm expecting to go home with one of those things. Like, I'm expecting to step into the role of like his nurse here, where it's like, I'm going to pour formula into this bag, hang it from this thing, click some buttons. Because at this point, here we are getting discharged. At this point, nobody has actually said, this is what it's going to look like. This is what you're doing. I had gotten a piece of paper from a dietitian a couple of days before outlining the fact that he had to have 2,800 calories. He had to be fed every 3 to 4 hours around the clock. I had to take 35 to 45 minutes to feed him. He had to have water before and after. And again, everything is being flushed through this tube. But that was it. It wasn't like anyone was like, here, this is how you do it. So he gets fed for the last time. And I'm like, I'm talking to the nurse, is somebody going to teach me how to do this? And she's like, oh, it says here that you've already gone through your orientation. My what? No. My what? My orientation? No. I don't think so. I mean, it's possible because I am delirious. But no, I'm pretty sure I would have remembered it sitting in a class of some kind, because that to me is what orientation is. And she's like, no, didn't a woman come in here and give you a piece of paper? And I'm like, that was my orientation? Okay. Then yeah, apparently I have been taught how to do this. And she's like, yeah, there's a representative with the formula company standing outside. He's actually going to come in and talk to you about the formula and what's happening next. Okay. So he comes in, he's watching Gavin get fed, and he's noticing that Gavin, so the feeding tube is a long tube that goes directly into his belly. And on the outside of it is this prong. It's got 3 valves on it. One is for the actual formula. And then he's like, why did you choose a 3-prong port? He calls it a port. Why did you choose a 3-prong port? And he looks at me and I'm like, you think I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't have anything to do with this. I didn't have a say in what. I got him a feeding tube, yay for me. But I didn't sign anything that said this is the kind we're looking for. And the guy's like, well, the 3-prong port have a lot of problems associated with it. I'm sure. Perfect. I'm not surprised. So far, nothing really has, we're not counting our aces here. Like, there's more cons on this list than there are pros here. And he's like, for example, you see how it's leaking? And he's pointing to Gavin's belly, and everyone looks down at Gavin's belly. And he's being fed formula, but one of the actual prongs is leaking formula onto Gavin's belly. And the nurse puts a little, and Gavin's like, I wondered why that was wet. And the nurse puts a towel underneath it. And she's like, yeah, it does leak. It leaks. And at this point, this nurse was the last one we had. And the formula representative is like, why didn't you report it? The guy's like, he shouldn't be discharged until this is addressed, because this is going to not just leak, it's going to explode, and the nutrients that are supposed to be in his body will end up on the floor. And she looks at the formula dude and really softly says, he's already been discharged. And the representative is like, well, I'll give you my card. Call me. You'll end up needing to have this replaced. And then he walks out of the room. And, there was nothing anyone could, I was just pissed. The nurse, prior to Gavin getting cancer, I did burnout recovery seminars to a lot of nurses around the country. And she had really good boundaries. She took breaks. She told me she was going on break, and if I needed something, she would address it in 15 minutes when she was off her break. Like, she did everything you're supposed to do to protect your mental health in that industry, to protect your boundaries. But, being on the caregiving side of it and the patient side of it, it just made me even more pissed, because, already that day, Gavin was puking up so much blood, so much mucus. probably because he was stressed about, there was so much commotion in and out of the room. He was excited to leave. He wanted to leave. He didn't want to be there. And he had been there for like 8 or 9 days at that point. He was probably worried about, me being so pissed. But so, there's that. And then I felt like I was insulted by this internal medicine doctor saying, oh, it's just caregiving overwhelm. Go hire someone to help you. And then, finding out the port, our actual like feeding tube thing was defected. It wasn't defected. It's just, 3-prong ports have problems. But and again, for any of you caregivers going through anything remotely similar where you are working with somebody who needs a feeding tube, if you're able to request a 2-prong or even a 1-prong port, do that. I didn't know. Had I known, I would have requested it. Anyway, so I'm told we're ready to go. And the nurse is like, I'm going to crush up some Tylenol. I'm going to crush up some ibuprofen, and then you can inject him with water and you can inject his painkillers. She's like, I'm sorry to say that the liquid oxy, the liquid gabapentin, and your fentanyl patches are not ready at the pharmacy. So all he gets is Tylenol and ibuprofen. And I look at the nurse and I'm like, why can't we stay? And she's like, that's out of my hands. Your discharge papers are already being worked on. So I administer Tylenol, ibuprofen, and water for the first time. And it's through a tiny syringe that I have to slowly pump into Gavin's feeding port. And then I'm told, this is how I'm going to feed him. I learn that on our way out the door, that I'm going to be given feeding syringes, and cartons of formula are being dropped off at our house right now. And every 3 to 4 hours, I have to feed him 375 milliliters of formula, which is like a carton and a half of food. I have to do it very slowly. I have to do it like 30 milliliters at a time. And I'm looking at this woman like, you're crazy. You're outside your mind. How does anyone do anything else other than this? Every 3 to 4 hours. So we get ready. She's like, why don't you go pull up the car and I'll get Gavin ready. I drive the car up to the front door. I'm sitting there, I'm waiting. I'm pissed. I'm trying really hard to be like, Susie Sunshine and, all excited and it's rainbows. Yay. Our next phase begins. We're finally out of the hospital. But all I can think of is he doesn't have the pain management. He doesn't have the pain meds. I have to now hand feed him. And right about then is when I got a call from the chemotherapy department, the oncology department. And they're like, we're ready to get Gavin back on the schedule. We have an opening tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. and we've booked you for your first meeting. And I'm like, I'm not coming back here at 7 a.m. It is now 4:30 in the afternoon. I'm going to hit traffic. I won't get home for an hour. I've got to feed him several times over the next several hours, right? And to make matters worse, I'm very, very well aware that in like 3 hours, he's going to be in excruciating pain because he's supposed to have a fentanyl patch tomorrow, which we don't have. He doesn't have access to oxy. He doesn't have access to gabapentin because he can't swallow anything now. At this point, everything has to go through his feeding tube. Nothing can go down because his vocal cords are so wet. They're so concerned about pneumonia setting in that nothing can be oral. And I'm like, I'm not bringing him back here at 7 a.m. And she's like, the scheduler says, well, there is a ticket in, or there's I can't remember the word that they used, but essentially she was like, if you don't come tomorrow at 7, then he doesn't have chemotherapy at all. Like, we'll take him off the calendar. So my options were drive him back, get in the car at 6 in the morning to get there at 7 in the morning, for him to be looked at by the oncology department to determine if he was even well enough to have chemo, or not do chemo at all. I knew Gavin, he didn't want any more chemo. He was so pissed at what happened last time that he wanted to be done with oncology altogether. But in the back of my head, I kept thinking the chemotherapy drugs were there to support the radiation. And if this is all said and done and the cancer comes back, or, they don't get all the cells and he has to do this again, I will always question if we don't push through and do all the things they recommend, did it come back because of that? So I hang up on this woman, tell Gavin we have to be back in the morning. And the next 12 hours are pretty awful. He's in a ton of pain. He's not sleeping. I get the formula. I prop him up in the bed. He's got to be at like a 30-degree angle. And it takes me 45 minutes to get 375 milliliters into his body. I do the water beforehand. I do the water after. And then he coughs. And the ropes of mucus. And he starts throwing up. And so I grab the paper towels, because those are always, the quicker picker up or whatever it's called, are always by us. And he starts throwing up into the paper towels. And as he's doing it, his body is convulsing and the port pops open. And so all of the formula goes everywhere. Goes all over our bedding, all down Gavin. It's on my arms. It's on my nightshirt. And I just I'm like hysterically crying on the floor. What's so crazy is I know our story isn't it's not like special. I think we experienced what millions of Americans experience. But that night, it was very clear, like, the level of commitment required of a caregiver. And my sole purpose was to keep him alive. At one point, I was so hysterical. I'm trying to clean it up. And I'm like, I stopped crying and I'm like, I think we have to do it again. I think we have to put more formula in you. And he's like, no, I just want to break. I don't want to do this I don't want any more. I'm not going to argue with him. I don't have the energy for it. But he sits up and he tries to collect the bedding. And I'm like, just stop, go take off your clothes, put it in the laundry room. I'll strip the bed, and I think that night we slept on the mattress. I didn't even bother making it. Wake up the next morning. I tried again. And I get him in the car at 6:30. We're 15 minutes late to the oncology appointment. And he's standing next to me and we check in. And the woman behind the desk is like, well, you're late. You can't come in here. You have to go back downstairs and get another appointment. And I just lost it. I was like, I told you I wasn't going to be able to get here by 7 a.m. I told you we were just discharged yesterday at 4:30 in the afternoon. 7 a.m. was a ridiculous time to put us. Nobody offered us any help. I'm like, if you want to see him again, you can rebook us. I'm not doing it. And we like stormed away. It's now like 7:15, 7:30. Gavin's like, I don't want to be here. I'm like, he's like, I just want to go home. I'm in a lot of pain. I don't want to do radiation. And I didn't have the gumption that day. I didn't have the fight in me to like, you have to do radiation. I didn't have it in me. So I put a note in on the portal, and I'm like, first of all, 7 a.m. oncology appointment is ridiculous. I said it was not going to work yesterday. If you want to see him, you can rebook us. I'm not going through this again. He doesn't have oxy. He doesn't have fentanyl. He doesn't have gabapentin. He's in an incredible amount of pain. We shouldn't have been discharged without the appropriate drugs. I'm incredibly disappointed in this service and in all of you. And I'm like, we're going home. We're not doing this today. So we go home. We both crash. A couple hours later, I get a call from his actual radiologist, apologizing. He's so sorry for the way that this has gone. And he's like, it's obvious Gavin's quality of life is really at stake here. He's having a really hard time with this. And I have to say that, you haven't had an easy case. He's like, I'm really sorry that you were discharged without the appropriate drugs. We've done everything we can to rush them through, and you should have them tomorrow. So by that point, the last oxy, last gabapentin Gavin would have for sure been, so this would have been Tuesday at like, let's say noon. Gavin probably hadn't had anything until like 3:00 Monday. So we're going on almost 24 hours at this point. And keep in mind that, and his fentanyl patch would most likely have worn off by that point. So he was used to 75 milligrams of fentanyl. Oxy, I think he was at like probably 20 milligrams of oxy every 3 hours, and 900 grams or 900 milliliters of 900 grams. So I can't remember the gabapentin. He took a lot. He was in incredible pain. And all I could do for him was like crush up Tylenol and ibuprofen and shove it into his belly. Gratefully, he slept because he was, so exhausted, but he was in a lot of pain. So the radiologist is like, let's do this. Let's take 2 days off. You have today off, take tomorrow off, come back here on Thursday. He's like, I'm not going to do anything with oncology. In fact, this radiologist is like, why don't you put a call into oncology and tell the oncology team that you think Gavin should be done and that his quality of life is at stake and chemotherapy is no longer required. And I'm like, I actually said to this, I'm like, you want me to call his oncology doctor? I thought you guys were supposed to work like together. Why can't you call him? And he's like, well, whatever. He didn't accept responsibility. So I put a follow-up note into his oncology team, and I'm like, just spoke to Dr. So-and-so. He suggested we be done with chemotherapy. We'd like to be done. So I tell Gavin the good news. Still no drugs, but you don't have to go back for radiation for a few days. And he gives me like a thumbs up. And, the rest of the day is quiet. The next morning, Wednesday morning, lying in bed, still no sheets. All of our bedding is like puked on in the laundry room. And the first thing I think of when I open my eyes is I have to go back to that place and get his drugs today. And I can't believe I've got to go there on our day off. And I just start bawling. Open my eyes. First thing is the heaviness of having to go back to that place. I just can't do it. So I send like an SOS message to my mom and my sister. And I'm like, can one of you guys go pick up Gavin's drugs? I just can't do it. I can't go there. I hate that place. I hate those people. I don't want to go there today. And a couple minutes later, my brother-in-law is like, I'm on my way there right now. I'll be there in like 30 minutes. What do you need? What do you need today? And I'm like, chicken soup, crackers, 7-Up. I'm not sick, but like, I just want comfort food. I'm like, popcorn, just all the things you think. I'm so tired of life right now. Just someone come take care of me. So he shows up a little while later with all these really great things and drugs for Gavin, which is great. He really needed it at that point. It was it's so hard. My mom came over later that day, helped clean the house, did the dishes, washed our sheets. And my mom saw me administer formula to Gavin. She has this picture. So after a while, it didn't take me very long actually to figure out a system. I have these like serving trays, and I would line up like 12 syringes filled with formula, not filled, like 40 milligrams, maybe 35 milligrams, probably 35 milligrams. And then I had a couple 2 syringes filled with water. And I would prop Gavin up on our couch, and I had the serving tray next to him, and I would stand up above him and pour formula down into his feeding tube. And so there's this picture of me. I'm not excited. I don't look good. I'm got my hand on my hip, and I'm like shooting my husband up with like formula. I can't believe that was, life for a while. It feels like 1,000 years ago. And yet it's like imprinted on my cells. He felt humiliated. He felt so bad. He wanted to do it himself. And for the first couple of times, we just couldn't get the angle right. Eventually, we figured out if he propped himself up on a bunch of pillows behind his back, he had to have pillows on his legs as well. He was able to feed himself. But in the beginning, it was 100% me around the clock. It's so hard. The amount of endurance caregivers are required to have is not something that you can really prep for. But here's what I learned though in those 2 weeks. My husband and I have an unbreakable bond. God carried us through that 100%. I spoke up for him when he couldn't speak for himself. I learned how to be fierce. I learned how to be gracious and confident in a way that nothing else had ever helped me embody. Patient rights are a thing. Caregiving overwhelm is a thing. Burnout is a real thing. There's no shame in asking for help. And there are a lot of resources available to us. We just have to know where to look. So if you are working with the hospital system, ask for resources from social workers. They usually are the ones that know. There are caregiving companies that will help you with reprieve and support you. We leaned on our family, our friends, our church, local organizations. But know that this part of your life won't be here forever. Do what you can to find joy in the moment, even if it's just listening to a song, getting outside, getting some fresh air on your face, listening to the wind chime blowing in the breeze, if you can hear that, snuggling with your dog or your cat, a really good cup of coffee. It's amazing how those little things really work to support you when you're going through hell. I love you. Thank you for listening. Tune in next time for getting closer to the end of season 1. If you are a caregiver going through it, please know I'm here for you. Reach out. It's always okay to have somebody else do the dishes.